Hi, everybody. My name is Carl Soule. I'm from Adobe. I've been with the company for going on 11 years. It's really great to be up here at KQED. I'm actually a Northern California boy. Spent the last 5 years in Singapore and just recently joined Van Bedient on the Adobe Hollywood team. We focus on high-end workflows for broadcast and feature films. Those of you who know Creative Cloud and know Premiere, I can remember going back to like 2008 when we introduced the first red workflows where you could edit natively in 4K with R3D files. Wow, have we come a long way since then. It was kind of a science experiment back in the CS4 days, but with Creative Cloud, we've got a really, really solid workflow with 4K, 5K, 6K going forward. And we're doing experiments now with customers that are dealing with 360 video and virtual reality, talking about the final resolution that they want to kind of target is 8K per eye. So actually Premiere can handle that. Our maximum resolution is somewhere in the 27 megapixel range in any dimension. So there's it's kind of, as a resolution independent tool, we've kind of been set for being able to edit whatever you want to work with. You can customize Premiere any way you want. We usually recommend editing in a timeline that kind of fits your final deliverable, and we've actually introduced a proxy-based system for people who are doing 8K editing. Can set up a proxy system where it's a simple toggle within Premiere to just toggle back and forth between the high-res and the lower-res files. It's kind of crazy to talk about a 2K file as a proxy, but we're actually seeing a fair amount of that. There's some of the workflows that we've dealt with. You see Deadpool back there. Working with David Fincher, he shoots everything at 6K, frames it for 5K, does repositioning of shots in post, and then delivers a 4K master. So for films like Gone Girl, working in Premiere was pretty crucial. One of the things that's really driven us in the broadcasting world, and one of the reasons it's great to be on a panel with all these integrators and systems, is we've tried to make Premiere really open. We're just a software company, and we understand that a full workflow, you have to have additional software plus hardware. It all has to work really well together, and so we've made Premiere open architecture in ways where you can add panels within Premiere to drive specific workflows. So anybody who knows JavaScript and HTML5 can actually write these plugins for Premiere that can help drive the overall workflow. And it's great to see, companies like CatDV have been amazing partners over the years, writing that type of integration with Adobe Premiere.
Thanks for the plug. That was good. My name is Ryan Servant, and I'm the VP of Business Development for CatDV. CatDV is an asset management system that kind of focuses on 3 areas. Some customers use it for just one of those 3 areas, or some use it for all. And really our focus is either collaboration, automation, or organization. And so some people are using it on the post side, where you have multiple editors with multiple platforms wanting to share content across that and search for that. Automation is we have a tool that we partner with a lot of these products that you see here and on the first panel, Telestream, Zendata, where we have API integration, or Adobe with the Premiere panel, that we are able to kind of be the traffic cop in your workflow. And so you can create it so that the database triggers actions, things like archiving or transcoding. And then organization is just a simple search, find, review and approval, sharing with the web, all very heavily permissions-based, so that you can design your own workflow for your asset management system. We don't want to tell you what your workflow should be. We kind of say, what do you want it to do? What do you want your workflow to be? And we try to partner up with as many people on the stage as you see.
My name's Rob Alberino. I'm the Vice President and Executive Producer for the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm probably the least technical person maybe in this room. I am a creative guy by trade. I've 20 plus years in the NFL, filmmaker for NFL Films, Vice President for the Philadelphia Eagles, for the Kansas City Chiefs, and then here for the 49ers. I've been here since 2013, been tasked to create in-house production groups for all of those teams, and that's sort of how I came to be where I am. I'm in essence the acting CMO for the company, but I work with a lot of these folks up here and folks on the other panel, Spectra, Avid, Adobe, huge fans. CatDV, we actually, when I was in Kansas City, we unearthed CatDV. We're lucky enough. You can imagine in the NFL how things have grown tremendously. Every play, every shot, community shoots that we go on, we catalog every single thing. Very meticulous. It's sort of like going to the library and making sure you can find that right book. It's the same way with CatDV. And my team, I have a team of about 36 folks who stand beside me, the men and women who are the creative marketing, fan engagement folks, and we use these products ad nauseum. And the other note is I'm also a sergeant in the United States Army, which for the last 2 seasons has bode well because the bombs have been dropping and people have been shooting at us. The good things that have held up are the equipment that we work on. So I'm happy to be here and talk with you guys.
I'm James Tucci. I'm the CTO of Archeon. Archeon is a company that makes storage solutions that are based on standards-based. It's a standard-based solution with AFP, NFS, those type of solutions. But the primary thing that we do is that we give you bandwidth upfront. Every one of our systems comes with, let's say our Omni system, which is our flagship, that comes with 4,000 megabytes per second out of the box. And if you add another chassis, you can get 8,000 megabytes a second. Why do you need this much storage? Not storage, but capacity. You need it because you want to work with your workflows as you wish, not as the limitation of your storage is. So give you an idea, we have a customer who, you know him, Mad Old Nut, who actually goes and has his Avid workflows, and he's using our storage on his Avid workflows. He's going in and looking at his, let's say he has a shot that he just got a graphic in, and he wants to put it into the show, and he's using ultra high definition. He's using 4K in the compressed form. What he then does, he needs to put the shot into the, mat it in. He'll go to resolve. He'll go and write DPX files, convert them, and then do the grading as well as putting in the graphic, and then bring it back in. So he has his DPX workflows in addition to his Avid workflows, in addition to Premiere, and he can do it all. He doesn't have to change the way he works.
Thank you. Phil. I'm Phil Story, CEO and one of the founders of Zendata. And we are best known for on-premise video archive systems based upon LTO and more recently based upon Sony optical disc. And actually, Jim and I are like totally complementary. We're both in the data storage business, but the reason that you need for creative video, but the reason that you need an archive is Jim would love you to keep buying more and more of his high-performance storage. But from your perspective, when a project is finished, or maybe if you're 49ers and you're a couple of seasons on, then you don't need to keep that material on expensive data storage systems. And so you'd move it across. So an archive system is much lower cost per terabyte, and also it's geared for keeping your material for a very long time. And as the previous, the guy from Spectra was saying, you also need to have, for very long storage, you need to have a mechanism to be able to move your content from, say, LTO5 to LTO7 and so on. So that's essentially what we do. And we have a couple of interfaces. One is a file folder interface. So we look just like writing to disk, a share sitting on your network. And we also have another one which gets instructions, and it moves files from, say, your shared edit storage across to the archive and back. And it's that API-driven data mover interface that we use in many cases for interfacing, for example, with CatDV. The reason you want to do that is if you're sitting at your client station and you want to move something from your shared edit storage and you want to move it to archive, you do not want it to go through that client machine. It will just slow everything down. You won't be able to use the machine. You actually want it to go directly from your shared edit storage across the archive and back. And so that's what that particular interface uses. What it means is with the file folder interface and with the API-driven data mover interface, we've got really great connectivity, and we work with a very wide range of media asset management systems. But probably the most popular, I'd say, over the last year since we've had our new interface is we've done more integrations with CatDV than any other man.
I'm not going to be able to afford to bribe all of you guys for our landing jobs.
You'll just have to get me a tequila later. So just a couple of other things. Coming up, we're going to announce this prior to NAB. Got a couple of other things coming. One is adding shared edit storage, not as high performance as Archeon, but adding shared edit storage to the archive, which really simplifies your infrastructure. And also we've got a very neat integration with Microsoft Azure blob storage, which is coming up. So having said that, I will pass over to my friend from Arista.
Hey, I'm Mike Franchini. I'm a systems engineering manager at Arista Networks. And first thing you should realize is that we're kind of light on the Arista in terms of like the entertainment side, but really, really heavy on the networks. You probably don't know of us very well, but we're responsible for the infrastructure of 6 of the 7 world's largest cloud service providers. We had a similar event just a couple of days ago, and I was happy to say that we weren't involved in the outage of the cloud service provider that we don't sell to.
Congratulations.
Which is a good thing to hear. The interesting thing is that as a company, we have been involved in the media business from basically 2 trajectories. One is content delivery services, video post-production services, working with some of the major studios and also some of the major entertainment houses. Basically, if you look at the combined traffic of YouTube and Netflix, over half of the entertainment traffic that's going to the home is traversing Arista platforms. But the other side of the coin, in addition to providing the infrastructure and that high performance tools that platforms that deliver that, is the software that allows our platforms to be managed and controlled by the applications that you use in your day-to-day workflow. So broadcasting, video post-production, working across a common infrastructure to provide more features, capabilities, and more creativity in terms of different types of media that are delivered. And you notice here in this current slide all the different types of bodies that are currently working towards providing more capabilities to the applications and workflows so that we can make a more feature-rich experience for the consumers. Next slide, Larry. A good example of that kind of flexibility is, for example, the work that we did at the World Cup in Rio, where we were combining video broadcast, internet broadcast, social media, and also post-production in a broadcast environment and also in a web environment using the same common infrastructure, which was a tremendous cost savings to all the folks involved in this effort. And this is played over again, for example, at the Rio Olympics, at the UEFA World Cup, and the list goes on and on. And this is kind of the realm, the world that we're taking part in, that we're contributing to, providing the necessary APIs to AIMS, AMWA, Video Services Forum, and Avenue, so that a variety of different platforms, a lot of those that are in this panel here, and some other ones which I'll mention in a moment, can play together and can innovate and create new opportunities and new applications for their users. Next slide, Larry. And this is kind of where we're trying to move away from and to, and that is instead of having multiple parallel siloed bespoke systems that are limited to a particular type of format, trying to generify that, make it ubiquitous, and also multi-purpose, so that the same infrastructure that could accommodate HT can also be ready to support 4K and move on to 8K and also over the top and content delivery. Okay, next slide, Larry. And this is the other part that we offer, and that is not just the hardware, but we have we're really a software company offering a whole host of services and capabilities that applications vendors can tap into and leverage to optimize the flow of traffic across the infrastructure. And the interesting thing is I like to tell my customers, in the end, we're basically plumbers. We provide a utility. And the best kind of utility you can have is the one that you never, ever have to worry about, that you never ever worry about, like the plumbing backing up, right? And this is essentially the software that ensures that you're always getting what you're asking for and never having to worry about it. And then I think I got 1 or 2 slides left. This one, essentially, what's also neat is, irrespective of the environment you're working on, from a very small post-production studio to an enormous broadcast network, we use the exact same software across the 40-odd different products in our portfolio. So what's neat is that you can essentially repurpose in different scale a variety of these applications running across the same infrastructure. And that's great. It's a great cost savings for your organizations. Okay, and I think one last slide here. The thing I want to mention here is all these APIs are helping us enable a whole multitude of vendors. Some are mentioned here, and NAB will actually be doing a whole interop demonstration, including a lot of these folks, in addition to Grass Valley Group, Imagine, Lao, and other vendors as well, all demonstrating the capability of integrating workflows and providing new synergies for new video and applications. And in the end, while we're a little smaller than the C company, we always tend to think of ourselves as having a superior architecture, and it also makes us more reliable, which again plays to that whole notion of a utility is good so long as you never have to worry about it. And that's it. Okay.
My name's Eric. I'm from NVIDIA. I'm the senior producer there, and I have about 5 edit systems that I'm using a lot of the stuff that was on the previous panel and this panel. We're shooting in 6K on Red and in 4K on Sony cameras, and we're kind of always kind of pulling in the latest materials. And so we're always kind of, I like to describe myself as the client from hell from Cutting Edge, because we're always pushing the edge on these things. But yeah, so I'm here just to hopefully let you know what the kind of workflows are. We are working in 4K. We are finishing in 4K. We're not going into our proxy thing, but we are using proxies for CatDV and other things. So I think it'll be a good discussion.
Great to have you. Thank you. So let's kick it off with some questions. Rob, thanks so much for being here. I didn't know you're sergeant. I thought you were a major.
No.
Oh, so okay.
Sergeant. That's
All
it.
right.
That's as far
Sergeant
as I'm
major.
going.
No, that's great. No, I could tell. Maybe talk a little bit about more your facility, your workflow, some of the products that you're using, and more importantly, how all those products are going to work together to ensure we win the Super Bowl next year.
Put me on the spot. That's a big. As long as we need hope, we need to stretch hope first.
We got Rob.
So we're blessed that we have a great relationship with Sony. We shoot on Sony F55s. We tried out one in 2013 when I arrived, and then we decided to rig it out to the teeth, and then we bought 10 more. And so we shoot everything on 4K that is of value for us down the line. I think much like the Giants guys, we are shooting what we like to think, anything we're going to use in a legacy, alumni interviews, wirings, some of our most premier stuff, things that we're going to use on our boards in our stadium, which are also 4K capable. We are thinking very much down the road, and I have lucky to have folks like Cutting Edge on my side. I have some brilliant folks who also, work on the guts of all of the machines that we do. But we cut on Adobe specifically. All of our drives are Avid. If you guys saw the video that Larry did, he did a great job. He added 10 pounds to my nose, which I appreciated. That's always embarrassing when you're up here and there's a video of you playing behind you. Avid drives, which we're going to be adding to. CatDV wrapped around that so we can catalog properly. Obviously Spectra, so we can touch the stuff that's offline and get back to it again, just like the folks at the Giants said. I think like most sports teams, we're hunting and gathering so many things. Not sure where we're headed. I think I said it best earlier when there was only a few people in the room, but we're sort of that dog chasing the bumper on 4K. We don't know what to do when we get to it, but we're going to be ready when we do. We have at this point now really 3 years worth of 4K footage archivally stored, ready to rock and roll to build elements and shows. And we have actually cut in 4K. We haven't really had the need or distribution to be able to push it out there, but we have a fair amount. And all of the gear that we work across, it really is synergistic. It really works super well. I mean, our beating heart are the Avid drives that we have. I mean, everything, our entire life exists on these. Now they're backed up 70 miles away as well. So if our building falls, we do have a backup. I think I wouldn't, you can tell anybody that. That's the good news. But you know, we're really trying to find ways to just be efficient, to be fast in football, unlike baseball or unlike basketball, and probably hockey for that matter, where you have dozens and dozens of games. We have 10 games, so 10 home games, and of course 20 games, 4 of those being preseason. So our seasons, it's really compressed, and we need to work round the clock the moment a game is over, because the relevance of that game only lasts for a few days. So we're churning and we're burning, getting things done, and we need to be able to count on our gear, because it is really being used at some times in 24-hour shifts. I don't think that's unlike some of the folks in this room or in news organizations, Comcast. You know, people are really relying on this gear, and for us, I think we've found the right mix of gear for sure. And you know, as I said in that video, we're driving this car and we don't have really time to be the mechanics, and I think that's where Cutting Edge comes in. And sometimes we pull over to the side of the road, we give them they give us the keys to their car, we drive away and they're fixing our vehicle. But I think things have worked really, really nicely in the mix that we've been delivering. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we're pretty focused on the bumper, though.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to chase that bumper at some point.
Thanks. That's great. Fantastic story. Really interesting stuff. And Eric is unique as well. He's actually delivering in 4K, and if he's not really our client from hell, honest, he's not. No. But he does. We learn a lot from working with him, because he's really pushing the envelope. I mean, he's pretty much any codec you can think about it. Anything with a lot of 4s after the name of the codec, he's got it. And we're constantly working with the manufacturers as well to find, the best solution we can for these situations. So it's a pretty exciting installation. But maybe you want to talk a little bit more about, what you're shooting in, some of the workflow, maybe how stuff comes in the facility. He's got everything from, asset management to archive to storage and so on and so forth.
So we have 2 Sony FS7s and a Red Dragon. So we're shooting mostly in 6K and 4K, but we're also doing VR and we're also doing HDR. And all those things add a lot of storage needs and a lot of complexity in the post-production process. So our workflow is we don't have time to do proxies. We can't come back and offload and make proxies and start editing. We have to edit right away. So we shoot, we bring the stuff into our Facila storage system and bring it into CatDV immediately. From CatDV, we send it off to archive. That's a LTO-based system that is going off the tape, so we know that stuff is safe, and that if we do need the space later on, we can clear it off and be comfortable that we can get that back. And then we, in Premiere, can take the CatDV panel. I don't know if you guys are familiar with CatDV, but it's a great asset management system. And then once it's all logged and everything in CatDV, we can search for it directly in Premiere, bring it into Premiere from CatDV through the panel, so all from Premiere, and then we can start editing from there. You're saying that we finish in 4K, and we do finish just about everything in 4K, but we also go beyond 4K. So.
Well, that's what the show is, 4K and beyond, right?
So, we have a lot of trade show stuff that we're doing. We just gave the keynote address at CES this year, and one of my jobs was to produce the opening video for that, and that was at 4480 by 1080. So kind of odd formats. We have other things that are 5780 by 1080, So being able to shoot in 6K and probably soon 8K is really important to us, because like I think a couple of people in the last panel said, it's really nice to be able to have that room to kind of reframe and move. You don't get the shot perfectly every time framed the way you want it. So when you're finishing in 4K, shooting in 4K is not enough. You want to have that extra room to move. So all those things are pretty important to us.
That's great. Well, let's jump back to Adobe. Why don't you give us an overview of your approach to 4K and some of your high resolution sort of workflows?
Sure. So the nature of how we handle all of these different workflows, for the most part, we usually recommend somebody work in a timeline that really kind of matches the highest resolution deliverable that you're going to actually export to. The way our proxy-based system is set up, we can actually generate proxies if you need proxies. And again, if you have a beefy enough system, we have people that have edited feature-length films at 6K resolution with the right hardware. That said, not all of us have a $20,000 workstation to do stuff like that on. So with proxy-based workflows, you can set up your project ahead of time to whatever proxy resolution is going to play back well on the hardware that you're working on. And the system can generate those in the background. By continuing to edit in the actual resolution that you plan on delivering at, it gives you the capability of doing like reframing of shots, doing a little bit of scale, playing around with the footage. And as you toggle and switch back and forth between the high res and the proxies, everything matches up, everything lines up. So as you're positioning things with the proxies or scaling or moving the proxies around, you don't have to worry about something like jumping out of alignment or having to go back and reconform everything. From a deliverable perspective, Adobe Media Encoder, which is really the export option for Premiere, we focus on just about every type of delivery. So whether you're working with social media, whether you need to go out, in a DCP file, we have options available just depending on where you need to send your media, what format you want to save your deliverable in.
I have a question. Is that
Yeah,
all right?
please.
Yeah. So with the proxy workflow that you're talking about, so you can make a proxy that's down-resing the footage, but you're still operating as if it was full res. So if you want to zoom in, to 150%, that won't change when you go back to the full res. It'll still be at 150%.
Right. So, like as an example, we've had people shooting on Epic at 5K, but they use a 4K timeline because they're planning on creating a deliverable at 4K. Now, the proxy file might be quarter res of the 5K or might be half res of the 5K footage. So as they kind of zoom in, it gives them that little bit of room to there's a little wiggle room around the edges. They're overscanning so that they can kind of reframe the shot, scale in and scale out just a touch. Provided you use the resolutions that are kind of built into the proxy panels, you can do that, and you're not going to ever have to worry about like something jumping or like something coming out of alignment. So it's a really really nice workflow. And proxies in Premiere is a relatively new thing. This is something that we added just in the last few years as we started seeing the 6K and 8K workflows, and these raster sizes have just moved faster than we're seeing new CPUs and new hardware coming to market. So it really seemed like we had to go back to the past to proxies and really kind of put that natively inside of Premiere as well.
Ryan, Squarebox. It's pretty much at the heart of a lot of what we do around here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges of all these different codecs and frame rates, maybe even speak to the type of files that you can bring into an asset management system like CatDV.
Yeah, like I was mentioning, we're pretty flexible. So when it comes to file types, we frankly don't really care, right? So you can tag an asset however you want, whether it's camera angle or producer or whatever your metadata is, you can tag an asset. And then that can be a JPEG, an audio file, video file, it could be a spreadsheet, doesn't really matter. And obviously we've got a lot of functionality when it comes to the playback of video, being able to create keyframes or add markers or subclips, those are all features that you want in an asset management system. And we can even do that in our web clients. So having the ability to have a web client that permission-based, you can go in, do your review and approval or add markers, and as soon as you hit save, all of that information is now accessible to bring into your NLE. It just creates a really nice, smooth workflow. And then on the archive side, when we talk about our partners like Zendata, it's very easy to archive that data and bring it back based on a metadata change so that we can, let's say, create a checkbox. And you tell CatDV, when this certain checkbox is clicked, let's go ahead and send that to Zendata. And those files can be everything. So if you've got scripts and photos and videos, you can highlight a catalog or a project and say, let's just archive this whole thing. And so in the future, when you go and search for that content, you'll have anything that you wanted to do, any of the elements that you wanted to have archived. I think in the last panel, someone asked about metadata on LTO tapes. So we can also have it so that the metadata that's associated with just the files that you're archiving goes along with those files. So even if you're backing up your database for disaster recovery, you're backing up the CatDV database, each LTO tape can actually have a like mini database. And so if you ever need to recreate that, when you're bringing that data back, all that metadata is there. And that metadata, again, is all the technical metadata, but again, all the custom metadata that you customers are working with.
Great. Jim, maybe I'll tie in two questions here for both you and Phil.
Okay.
How prepared is the industry for 4K? And Phil, you can tag on to the internet. How prepared is archive for 4K, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, currently, I believe that we are ready for 4K. I mean, the equipment is out there, the storage is out there. I know that because that's our primary thing, and it's all out there and it's available at a low cost. So I firmly believe that 4K is here. And we're going to be seeing 8K pretty soon. But I think also in the 8K range of things, we're looking at, we're looking at increasing our storage to another level, and that's going to be, those are announcements that are coming up. So yeah, it basically, 4K is here right now. I mean, people are using it, and not only using it, they may not be delivering it, but that's their choice. But I think the equipment is there, the processes. There's some stuff in the processes that have to be straightened out. But that's just all part of what everybody does, what our industry does. So yeah, it's here now.
And as far as the archive side of things is concerned, there was a step change that happened just over a year ago when LTO7 drives and cartridges started shipping. And an LTO7 cartridge has got a 6 terabyte capacity, about $100. They have got a 30-year lifetime. But one of the things, not only was there a big step up in capacity, but the data transfer rates went up. And I can give it to you in megabytes, but it's probably best to put it in kind of terabytes per day. So with a single LTO7 drive, then you can archive 20 terabytes a day. So if you just imagine that you've got 25, if you imagine that you've got a system with even just 2 LTO7 drives in it within a robotic library, then you're up to 45, 50 terabytes a day, which is more than most anyone needs. So absolutely, archive is totally ready for 4K.
Cool. Thanks. Michael, you're the plumber, right? We need fast, reliable Ethernet to handle all of this sort of 4K stuff. And we even did an install recently at a major San Francisco company that has a car service that picks you up when you have a little app on your phone. And they were interesting in that they had the second floor, I think, and the 14th floor were separated. So they had storage in one location, editorial at the other. And we had 2 Arista switches at both locations. But in order to move that amount of data back and forth, we had to do a bunch of bonding. So you want to talk a little bit about how to bond?
So, in the modern world, most devices are running at 1 gig, although in the data centers you're seeing 10 gig and 40 gig and 100 gig. And a quick workaround is basically to aggregate a couple of these links together, parallelize them, and increase the bandwidth. Not unlike what you see in the storage devices in terms of massive parallelized RAID arrays that are able to ingest data at a quick rate, and that's a capability that is helping to accommodate these new rates. But just kind of tack on to what the folks at Archeon and Zendata are referring to. I think the 4K market is already here. Netflix is already delivering their productions in 4K. It's just a matter of time before our handheld devices and our TV sets will be able to present that in that level of resolution. And to that end, we're hearing about these platforms' ability to inhale in the order of terabytes per second. And the way I translate it is, in today's world, 10 gigabit, it would take a dozen minutes to kind of put that data through the infrastructure. But we're already now offering 100 gig, where now you're literally talking a handful of minutes. Now we're doubling that data rate, so it'll be a couple of fingers worth of minutes. So from the ability of the infrastructure, the plumbing to be able to deliver that, it's there right now, and I think it's also meeting quite nicely with customers' demand for that kind of capability.
Cool. And Eric, we were talking earlier, you had kind of an interesting story you were telling me about London. You're shooting in a couple red cameras, long flight back. You've got CatDV on a laptop.
Yeah.
Some kind of
So we had a shoot that was kind of sprung on us last moment that had to be done for GDC, which is happening right now. And so I was sent to London to shoot this. It was a custom PC builder that were building these really cool custom PCs. And we had 2 red cameras on the shoot, a Sony AES7, some GoPro time lapses, some yeah, I think that's about it. So we had a lot of footage. We shot for 2 days, and we need to turn this around in literally like 3 days. After we shot for 2 days, the next day I got on a plane. I had about a 10-hour flight back. I literally plugged in my hard drive with all this footage on it into my laptop. I had CatDV going on in there, and I just logged all the footage. Just went through every single shot and got it all ready for the editor. And when we got back, was able to plug that drive into the PC workstation and told CatDV to move that over to the storage, and then my editor started working on it, and she already had all my notes in there and knew what the good shots were, and it was all fresh in my mind because I knew everything it was, and we were able to turn that edit around really quickly. And that, we're fairly new to CatDV. It's actually a new product for us, and it's already saved us a ton of time in the post-production process. So I'm really happy with that whole integration.
Yeah, great, awesome. And how about releasing to Netflix and that sort of stuff, UHD, 4K resolutions? Maybe you want to talk, I think you have some pre-built workflows. Maybe you can touch on for the audience here?
Yeah, so one of the file formats or the package formats that places like Netflix are kind of standardizing is something called an IMF file. That's not something we currently export today, but with other partners like Telestream, putting that package together oftentimes entails a lot of different types of metadata. It's this whole idea of having one file to rule them all that can go out with different subtitles to different regions and whatnot. The key thing there is the video format for IMF is using a J2K codec, and that is something we can actually support today. So as part of an overall workflow, using Adobe tools, you can take your video essence, get it in the right codec, so as you hand it off to go through the process of adding the additional metadata, the different tagging for different regions and whatnot, you can make that happen.
Okay. Wanted to back up too, Jim, and just put a plug for Archeon. This same car company we're just talking about here that has the Arista switches. We did install Archeon in there, and not a single phone call, not a single blink. It's been rock solid, and the performance has been absolutely phenomenal. Asset management really is the glue that ties all this together, right? So Phil, maybe you can touch a little bit on, some of your, we've been instrumental, I think, in bringing these great companies together. We work with some good friends of ours at North Shore Automation who make some middleware that allow these different products to all kind of work together in some sort of workflows. But maybe both you and Ryan can touch a little bit on how asset management archive can be, glued together with these various parts. Yeah.
Just a personal thing here.
Yeah.
Basically, it was in April when we started shipping the integration using this North Shore integration module. And that actually happened because of an introduction from SIG. So he's asked for a percentage.
That wasn't a setup question.
He's asked for a percentage of our profits, but that is not happening.
But not your losses.
So in terms of integration, you want to be able to archive it. It's pretty simple. You want to be able to archive and restore from the user interface that you're just using all the time. So you can do that from the CatDV user interface. And it's, as I mentioned earlier, sends off an instruction to the CatDV server. It sends an instruction to the Zendata archive. We go and pull the high-res content directly from the shared edit storage, or for a restore, we push it back. So it makes it really, really simple. It gives really high performance because you've got this direct connection. One of the other things is that with LTO, you've really got a couple of tiers of storage. You can have a library, a little library, or a great big library, and you've got LTO cartridges in it. And those LTO cartridges will deliver restores automatically because you've got this robotic arm moving them around. If you want to go to another lower tier of storage, then we fully support that. And so you could be producing, say, 2 duplicate copies of LTO cartridges. The idea is that one of them can go to your DR site 70 miles away or whatever. But if you take both of those out of the library, put one on the shelf at the facility and then another one in another location for best practice, then you want to be able to easily manage that. So if there's an asset that you want to restore, then what will happen with this integration is that it will tell you the barcodes that the content's on. It will tell you that it's no longer in the robotic library, and that then means a human robot has to go along and take it off the shelf and put it back into the library again. So again, all of that's built in. So it's a very smooth integration, and we've been installing like one of these every 2 or 3 weeks, and we've got a very happy customer base. It works great.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a better partnership, Phil. And I don't want Sig's head to get too big, but Cutting Edge has been really valuable in that when you hear the term value-added reseller, their job is to pick their best breed products that fit the workflows and the needs of their customers. And so this is only a little bit of bribing when we hear the fact that we all kind of work together, when it's the Telestream or Adobe or Zendata. We want products that all kind of talk to each other, because you don't want one manufacturer to do everything. And just like I am not the best transcoder, which is why we lean on Telestream if you want a really, really high-end enterprise platform. Same thing with archiving. I don't want to be your archive hardware, so I want to be able to partner up with platforms like Zendata. And so Cutting Edge has been really, really impressive with bringing these products together and making us talk to each other. To your point about you want to be able to archive from the platform that you're used to, right? So CatDV, for us to trigger that third party, that North Shore plugin to archive, we kind of say, like, how do you want to do it? Like I referenced in my intro, we don't want to tell you this is how you do it. We kind of say, well, what are you comfortable with? Is it that checkbox? Is it when it's ready for approval, is only one person in your facility that when they sign into CatDV, they see a bunch of files and it's waiting for that one person to highlight and say, okay, now you can archive it. And so you're really able to, on a permissions basis, have different roles within your company, and based on metadata changes, decide what you can see and what you can do in your kind of overall workflow. So metadata is key. And I mean, just as an aside, I mean, when you talk about asset management or any asset management platform, the most important thing is, what is your metadata? And when we first talk to a customer, we always say, well, what do you have? What do you have for metadata? And almost always they say, well, we don't have anything. And then you really start to poke and prod, and you find out they have a spreadsheet, or they have a Google Doc, or they do have an old, they have I don't care if it's a notebook, or maybe they have a really smart folder structure. And we say, you have metadata, and I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. So things like a folder structure, if they have a very just defined folder structure, when we bring that into CatDV, we can take that and extract that and make that searchable fields as metadata. And so we always want to figure out, let's not start over. Let's figure out what you have and bring it in there, because an asset management system is only as good as the metadata you associate to the files. I've had customers say, well, how do you think we should tag our assets? I said, I'm leaving tomorrow. Like, you don't want me to pick how I organize your content. You tell me how you want to organize your content. And so a lot of that is whiteboarding, is doing kind of a scope of work. What are our goals? What are our problems? And the final plug is SIG and Cutting Edge are the best people to talk to when it comes to let's figure out what the problem is and how best to solve it.
Can I jump in on that really quick?
Yeah, you guys, I'm not looking for this, man. It's about you guys today.
Actually, it's a great point by Ryan. What we did was we created, probably 7 years ago, we created a key, just literally a key. We are going to call this. If it's for instance, if we're coding things for football, if it's a gain where there's a hit, it's a run stop. If there is no gain, it is a run stuff, and there is no space between run and stuff. Or like, we literally created a key. And when our editors are logging, when our predators are logging, including myself, when we're putting these things in front of us, everyone is to create this the same way, and it becomes such. I can't tell you how incredible it is. If the metadata is put in, you can never have too much either. You don't have to go so overboard that it's ridiculous, but there are times that I could look for, our linebacker, Navarro Bowman, in a red jersey, on third down, without a helmet, on the sideline in a night game. Like, I can literally find that just like that. And I've proved it to when interns come in, if I'm looking for shots of a player from the 1950s, I can put it in there and it literally will bring me everything that I need, top, ground, again, jerseys, different elements, rain, perfect audio. It's an incredible thing, but it's only really as good. It's sort of like when you shoot, whatever you bring your editor, right? Because I've been on that flight back from London where I'm looking at my own stuff, and your editor's bitching you out because you didn't bring him any good stuff, and you're like, why aren't you cutting me what I need? You're like, it starts at the glass. Well, this one really starts, in your metadata really starts with you. And when we deep dove with CatDV, we did open up notebooks. Yeah. We did have literally like the marbled notebooks, and we had our notes, and we kind of went back as far as we possibly could, but it set us up for the future.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was going to go ahead.
Well, just one other thing I think that will help illustrate kind of the importance of all this stuff is that, so we're fairly new to CatDV, and we've been archiving stuff to LTO for a long time. But we never know when we're done with a project, so we kind of wait as long as we can, and when we need to archive it, we finally lay it off. Without the kind of media asset management side of things, I would know, there's a shot that I want to use from this particular show, but that project was 10 terabytes, and I need one shot from that thing. I have to restore that entire thing to go searching for that, because the name of the file has nothing to do with what the shot is. But now with CatDV, and I've already been doing this a lot recently, where we did a show with deadmau5 a while back, and for this show that I was just talking about, we made some custom PCs for him, and we wanted to use some of that in this show, and that stuff was already offline. Went into CatDV, I typed in deadmau5, I saw all the thumbnails in there and the proxies that I saw. I could play the shot. Oh, that's the one. I could bring that shot without even taking it off of the LTO tapes, just the proxies, into Premiere. I can edit with it, and then when I know those are the 3 shots that I need, and then I tell CatDV to restore the full res thing. And it was like, it saved me literally 4 hours of restoring in a deadline that 4 hours would have killed us. So we would not have been able to use that.
If you could just slow down, because I'm going to have to go to the ATM to pay this. This is unbelievable.
Production witchcraft.
Technology makes you impatient, so it's really, these are really valuable tools. Rob, you actually stole my question. I was going to go right there. Rob brought over some of his expertise from the Kansas City Chiefs, right?
And by the way, that's how you know when your wife loves you, when she moves to Kansas for you. That's like the ultimate, then she gets whatever she wants.
My wife's from Missouri.
There you go.
But we live in California, so.
Yeah, you're not going to die from one thing in Kansas. It's excitement. That's my line.
Yeah, but what was great, he brought over all of that experience and expertise from the Chiefs, and we were able to look at that and kind of re-adopt that and remap that to his CatDV workflow. And it's really is incredible what they've got there. There's a bunch of commands, so they can just hit a keystroke and it'll say, reverse angle, it's always plus 5 yards. It's never back 5 yards,
Right.
This player and all that sort of stuff. And they can hit a button and it writes the file out with all of that information embedded in the file. It's really impressive. So they've done a great job with that. Another thing I'll mention a lot of these people are using is the CatDV panel for Adobe Premiere. So what this means is you can have somebody that knows Premiere as an editor, maybe doesn't know everything about CatDV, but everything's cataloged in CatDV. They can live in Premiere with just an extension panel that pops up, search through your CatDV catalog from within Adobe Premiere, and then fire anything right into your bins and start editing right there. It's pretty cool end-to-end sort of workflow, right? And you're using that quite a bit, right?
Yeah, and the other thing that's really nice about, and I typically will work on, I only edit some of the higher line stuff because I'm sort of air traffic control for the people now, but for the long form documentaries that we do called The Faithful, some of those pieces, I'll literally have a window of CatDV and then I'll edit on a single window, and I'll eliminate things that I don't need to see. I don't need to see ins and outs and all that stuff. I will really like
Strip
keep
it
it
down.
simple, stupid, right? In front of me, here are my shots, and very searchable in what we call 49er Studios, FNS sort of ligature. We'll kind of tear through it, and God, it's just really easy. And I feel for you, because a lot of times I was on, I'd be on the phone trying to tell somebody where that shot was. And I'm the only person, I'm like, I know where it is. It's in the 1984 highlight reel. It's like, Jesus Christ, just put it in CatDV and figure it out. So
This is bringing me back. Many, many years ago in a past life, I was working with Steve Sable. They had a custom system. I think it cost them $8 million, but it was basically what you're describing. They had to go out and custom build this so that they had that ability to go through and actually do that type of search work to find those bits and pieces. And it was all a manual system going back to film scanners and everything else. And to me, it's just the democratization of this process. We've made it, tools have made it so much easier now.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen some creative people in terms of getting metadata into the system. There's a sports team, and they unfortunately didn't use CatDV, but I was on a panel where they were speaking about how they used superfans to tag their assets. And so they basically kind of put out a notice saying, come here, look at legacy footage, we'll feed you beer and pizza, and you can watch all these old, I don't want to call them games, but you can watch the performances, and they tag them. And they're because of the super fans, they know more than a random intern that may just know video, right? So they saved millions of dollars in tagging assets, and the super fans, they'd be there for 8 hours, and they're like, can we do some more? And they would sit there and do some more. So, really thinking, how are we going to organize it? Because again, I can't stress that enough. And you mentioned the more metadata, the better. We've also made it easier so you can look at your old footage and say, man, I really wish we had tagged it with this additional field of metadata. For us, you just make the new field of metadata, go back and tag it all as that new field. So you can even, as you get more and more advanced with your tracking of assets, you can even go back and kind of fix any of the mistakes or any of the shortcomings that you may have started off with.
As my partner Brian Botel said, it's really a dictatorship, not a democracy, when it comes to tagging assets. So when we get a hold of that media management person, he has to really enforce that policy across all the editors and that sort of stuff. So time-wise, we're getting the tequila bar is closing soon. And I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask these folks some questions. So let's open it up to the floor and see if you guys can stump the panel. Yes.
Question for the gentleman at Zen Data.
Oh, hi.
Wondering how you guys calibrate the shelf life of archiving 4K footage. For example, I think you mentioned 30 years.
Right.
That's a great question.
Yeah. A long time ago, I did some of this. It's called accelerated life testing. And so the issue is, well, how long is this going to last? We've just invented it, and it's the LTO7 that we're going to ship next month. How long is it going to last? And so there's a kind of scientific method. It's called the Arrhenius method. And they put these cartridges in different elevated temperatures and look for degradation, and they come up with a number. And it tends to work. Certainly the experience, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's SD or 4K. It's just bits when you get down to it, and are those bits going to survive over the years? And certainly LTO1, how long has that been out? Certainly well over a decade. And all I can say is that we've got like 1,000 installations around the world. we have never seen a problem due to degradation of the actual recording medium. So I think it's probably a pretty good number, but that's basically how they calculate it. But so if the science is right, it'll all be there in 30 years' time.
Is there a kill switch at the end of 30 years?
Planned obsolescence.
Not that I'm aware of.
You'll have to upgrade to LTO-20.
So it kind of opens up the, if I may,
Yeah.
it kind of opens up the issue. Well, let's think back 30 years. What technology were we using 30 years ago? And so you then have the issue of, well, I've got to find drives, and I've got to find computers with operating systems that will work with those drives and so on. So in reality, 30 years is okay, but we're talking about digital media here. And so if someone does want to keep their content for a long time, then you should be thinking about, well, how am I going to migrate it? And the gentleman from SpectraLogic talked about their method. We have the same thing. We call it repack. And basically, it's something where you set it up, and with LTO, it will read back not the last generation, not just the last generation, but the generation before. So we have customers that are on LTO 5, and they use the software, which repack, just to take the content and move it across to LTO 7 cartridges. And so that's the kind of thing that makes sense, perhaps every 7 years, 10 years, or something like that. And I'm sure Spectra do it the same way that we do it. It basically means that you saved this file to a particular folder and you gave it a particular name, and it was on LTO 5. Well, after the repack process, the file's in exactly the same place. It's got the same name, it's in the same folder, it's got the same ones and zeros associated with it. It just now lives on today's generation of LTO. So that is something that you have to think about. And we're in an industry, unlike some industries like the banking industry or whatever, where they keep their content for 7 years or something. We generally want to keep it forever. And so that is absolutely something to think about.
Anybody else? Some questions? Yes.
I guess my interest is in the beyond 4K, because I work a lot in new color spaces, so Rec 2020, HDR10, Dolby Vision, where you're getting into really high bit depth color spaces, and if any of you have experience in that, where that's starting to take up space, and you know, the image size is one thing, but then your color gamut and your luminance are starting to increase as well as those movies that sort of.
Eric, you were going to talk about HDR. Does that tie in?
We're starting to capture a lot of stuff in HDR. So we found that, you know, shooting in red and things like that, you have all the data that you need there to create HDR in kind of the post-production process. But we also, my company does a lot of gaming stuff, and HDR gaming is becoming really big. So now we need to all of a sudden capture game footage in HDR, and a recent project that we did, one of our first true HDR projects that we did, that we were capturing in a Apple ProRes codec 4444 XQ, I think, and it's huge. You know, I mean, I think we had 20 minutes of game footage that was 2-3 terabytes. You know, and it is one of the reasons why storage is so important, archiving is so important, and having, you know, fat pipes is really important. And it's all, you know, and then you add that to VR, and you need that in a 360 view, and you know, so that is just going to get bigger and bigger. But luckily, a lot of the tools that people here are capable of handling that. Adobe has the ability to edit in VR these days, and you know, those things. The tools are out there to manage that, and we were able to, you know, edit on our storage facility, you know, in HDR, you know, without going down to proxies, and be able to edit off the original files. So yeah, it's happening.
And let me also add that there's a lot of acronyms and buzzwords there, right?
Yeah.
You know, Rec 2020, HDR, but we've got a cool little white paper we've created for you that's in some folders, and you can pick those up on the way out too. So make sure you do grab our little 4K white paper. You had a question as well?
Yeah, I do. This question is for the KQED guy. I know you talked about your plugin for Adobe and all that for Neural, but what about Hanukkah Pro? I know Hanukkah Pro is really good metadata
So if you go to Final Cut X's website and you kind of go to the ecosystems and look at asset management, we're one of their premier partners. In fact, the screenshot is a screenshot of CatDV. So when it comes to Final Cut integration, we absolutely marry the metadata, the markers, everything you'd want to be able to go back and forth. It's not a separate panel, but you're able to have the same project open, and you can just do essentially the same thing where you're searching and querying, highlight the information, just drag and drop, and it goes right into Final Cut. And if you have a mix of NLEs, that's even better, right? So if, let's say someone's using the web client, they create a sequence on our web client and save it to CatDV, it can be brought into Final Cut or into Adobe or into Avid. And so you're able to have multiple people working on either tagging or marking, or maybe one guy is doing the tagging and the metadata entry on a sequence. You can then bring that sequence into multiple formats. It's pretty easy to do. Yep.
And we're going to have opportunity to ask them more questions out there later, but I'll finish with one more here real quick, just time-wise, but please.
Just real quick, maybe it's Gary from IOM. I might be a bit out there, but does anyone use any image recognition software to augment or help tag images, such as face recognition, TinEye, that sort of stuff?
So the short answer is everyone is looking at it. And so it's kind of like when you look at something like a product like, it's not exactly the same, but Nexidia, when you look at audio recognition, right? When you're looking at the phonetic speech and having that database tie in. The short answer is yes, everyone wants that. I don't know if everyone wants to pay for it, but everyone wants that. And I do think that you'll start to see a lot of companies at NAB doing that. So I would say it's coming fairly soon.
Yeah, at Adobe last November, we announced a group of machine learning tools called Adobe Sensei. It's not really a product, it's really what our labs have been working on, and we showed a lot of sneak peeks at Adobe Max last year, which got into that type of space. So everything from the way you search for stock images to how you catalog your own assets. So it's definitely an area of focus within our advanced technology labs.
Yeah, and I've seen some products. There was a product in South America that you still have to kind of build the database, right? So you have to show the computer a red truck. You have to type in the word red truck, and then it starts to learn. Okay, that's what a red truck looks like. And then the more times you say, yeah, that's a red truck too, it starts to kind of build that smart functionality. The driver of that part of the industry is really advertisers. So they want to be able to capture 24/7 on a channel and say, anytime I see my logo, if it's on a billboard, if it's on someone's shirt, I want to know every single time my logo comes on TV. And so they can figure out, these are the types of people we should target, or man, that celebrity is always wearing our logo, we should go after him to be a spokesperson. They're all looking at it comes down to analytics, right? And so I do think that kind of logo recognition will be the baby steps first, and that's where it seems to be going from.
It's a great question, Gary. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk with him outside there too. We're running a little short on time here, but these are some really important, sharp guys here, and for them to take this kind of time out of their busy schedules and be here tonight, I think is a big deal. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank KQED again for hosting us here. We can't thank you guys enough for this phenomenal facility, and thank you, audience members, for coming.